Thanks, Alana. And we're just about halfway through the 2024 general election campaign, and canvassing is in full swing throughout all of the 43 constituencies nationwide. The closing date for withdrawal of nominations was on Monday. There were no withdrawals in the 5-seat Mayo constituency, so 16 candidates as originally listed will be on the starting blocks. Polling day is Friday week, November 29th, with the count taking place the following day in the TF Royal Theatre in Castlebar. Today, in our fourth in our series of election debates in the 5-seater constituency of Mayo, we welcome to our studios Sinn Féin candidate Councillor Gerry Murray, Fine Gael candidate Keogh and independent candidate Gerry Loftus. Now, in each debate, we point out that candidates are responsible for what they say, and we ask you, please, candidates, not to speak or shout over each other, or we'll simply have to cut your mic. So we're asking you, please play fair. And as ever, we thank listeners for your questions, and we'll try to get through as many of them as is possible. Starting in the usual way, in less than a minute, we ask each candidate what's the single major issue for them ahead of Friday week, polling day. Councillor Murray, what are you finding is the big issue?
Big issue is housing. Lack of housing, number one, and unsustainable rents. Part of East Mayo, you have people paying $1,600, $1,700 rent. It's a big issue because it's an issue for the parents of these people that are paying these high rents. It's an issue for the grandparents. People are under enormous pressure. Their biggest worry is, will the rent continue to increase? And in the absence of supply, the consensus is that basically maybe by this time next year, some rural areas people could be paying as much as $2,000 a month rent.
Okay, so housing
is huge issue on the doorstep.
Okay, Keira, what do you see as the biggest issue as your polling or as your canvassing?
I guess for me, strangely, the biggest issue that's coming up on the doors for me is the realisation that Michael Ring has retired after 30 years. It's the first thing that comes up. We've had a TD in West Mayo for 30 years and people are realising now that office is closed. So I have a big responsibility to ensure we keep that office open, keep a voice to represent the issues that matter to our constituents. But the next thing that comes up then for me, because I'm a behaviour consultant, is obviously disability services and supports and inclusion.
Okay, and Gerry Loftus, what have you found to be the biggest issue as you go door to door?
Well, in urban areas, I find the biggest issue going up on doors is the cost of living, the extortionate electricity bills, the cost of food, and all that type of thing. If you go more rural, the issue of rural decline, the decline of our villages, schools, all these things, which are so critically important to rural Ireland. People are really, really worried about depopulation, about more and more people leaving rural Ireland and rural Ireland shutting down. But in general, it's a multitude of things, from the cost of living to, all these closures, to health, to housing. Housing is a very big one also.
And we'll go now into more specifics. Just before I get started then, Keira, I'm going to ask you, because Patsy O'Brien, former Fine Gael councillor, was in our news there, and the reason why Fine Gael expelled him from the party. We have asked for Councillor Patsy O'Brien for his comment. He hasn't come back to us as yet today. As a Fine Gael candidate, what would you say?
Look, Teresa, I've been really focusing on my own campaign as a first-time candidate. Getting posters up and going, getting canvassing, getting everything covered is enough to worry about. I'm not concerning myself too much with Patsy. I look forward to hearing what Patsy has to say himself on Friday, and I trust that the party dealt with it accordingly. Okay,
well, we'll move on. Listeners are asking, health again, major issue for many, overcrowding at Mayo University Hospital, and lingering on trolleys is a big issue for many people. Also, listeners highlighting the difficulty in accessing a GP or a dentist in their locality, and making the point that until adequate primary care is available, how can essential services, health services, be better provided in this county? Councillor Gerry Murray, I'm sure you've often been faced with those situations. Having access to a GP or a dentist is a huge problem in the county.
What we intend to do in the first 100 days of government is to recruit at least 300 GPs, and they will be employed directly by the state.
But where will they come from?
Well, I can tell you that there's an excess of doctors abroad. I have been, I've had occasion to interact with West Dock on a number of occasions. There's doctors out there from Cuba, etc., highly skilled. It can be done. They're out there just to recruit them. And basically, if there's a skills deficit, you go out and you do the recruitment. And that's what we intend to do. And David Cullen has done the research, and we're confident we can draw on a global pool of doctors who will come in here and who are every bit as competent as efficient as our indigenous
And
GPs.
are there dentists out there in those numbers?
Yes, there are. Yes, David has done all of this research, and there's people out there who will be more than happy to come to Ireland and work. I have encountered some of these people before. They're very efficient. They're very caring. They have a huge duty of care to their patients.
I'm not questioning their ability or anything else, but it's to get them here and to get them in place. You say that's very possible in 100 days.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
And we've done the research on all of this. We've been researching our policies since the last general election, and David Cullen has come down and he's engaged, like Owner Bryn, with all of the stakeholders in Mayo. We've gone back and done the research, and our strategy is in place and ready to go in the first 100 days of government.
Well, Keira, Keogh, Fine Gael have been in government. It's a wonder they didn't think of accessing this pool of people that we need.
The first thing I'll say, Teresa, I won't agree with Gerry too much today, I'm sure, but I will agree with the amazing response from West Dock. I recently had my granny pass away, and we had a fantastic doctor come from West Dock, and he was a foreign doctor, and again, amazing. So I'll agree with Gerry on that one. But look, we have never invested as much in the health service, 23.5 billion. I know that that's not going to, help someone whose loved one is waiting on a trolley. But what's exciting is to see the new A&E that will be open, going to construction in 2025 in Castlebar. That's going to help. I know what you're saying about incentivising people to come here. We are going to increase college places for nurses and doctors, and I think we need to look at incentivising them to come here.
But go to the primary care aspect. I mean, if you can't access a GP or a dentist, that's the reality on the ground for some in this county.
It's great to see so many primary care centres that have opened across Mayo in the last number of years, and we need to expand on that service, because the more people go to primary care centres, the less they'll go to A&E, and we are going to put in more places for dentists, doctors and nurses, and the GP scheme is going to be increased by 80%.
Yeah, but the problem is that Fine Gael have been in government, and the scarcity in both GPs and dentists on the ground in rural Ireland is not a new issue.
It's not a new issue, but the population has increased exponentially. We've got the economy to a great place. We've put a lot of money into the health service, but now we have to work on management and keeping our nurses and our doctors happy and working.
Okay, well, Gerry Loftus, I came across you, of course, in Lahardon, where you had a big campaign just within the past 12 months to secure a local GP. You got one, so you know the reality on the ground that people are finding difficulties in accessing both.
Yeah, well, look,
GPs and dentists.
We were fortunate, or are fortunate, that I did start that campaign and got great people to come with me, and went on for a long time, and we have a brilliant GP service in Lahardon now. I hope Keira is right there when she says about Castlebar Hospital, and that it's not similar to an A&E that Indy Kinney promised to us 10 years ago, and we're still waiting for it. The reality here is, and I'd agree with Gerry on numbers, but the facts are that we have let all our young dentists, our trained dentists, our doctors, our nurses out of the country, simply because they were not prioritised as creating the correct work environment for them, living quarters, paid them properly. We had nurses in training who wasn't getting paid until they were after 3 years in training, all that type of stuff. And until it's all I say, we're going to recruit 300,000 doctors or nurses or whatever. Where are we going to put them? Where are they going to live? We don't have these facilities. And until we get the groundwork done, and we're not even doing the groundwork, we're at nothing, we're going no place. Until we get and create the correct working environment for these people and keep them at home and not beyond in Australia or beyond in Canada, that's what we're not doing. And until we start doing that, this is not going to happen. It's simply not going to happen.
Okay, well, with that, we'll take our first break, and we'll be back and we'll talk a bit about housing, because, of course, the scarcity of housing is a major issue in this county ahead of the general election. And you're welcome back to our election debate, the fourth in our series. And today in studio we have Councillor Gerry Murray, Keira Keogh and Gerry Loftus. Now, we were talking about housing throughout the first part of the programme, but just to focus in again, despite full employment, Many are struggling, they say, to make ends meet, and there's particular shortage of housing as rents continue to rise, and securing a mortgage is impossible for many working families in the county. Another listener says it's really upsetting to see the level of dereliction and vacancy around the county, and asks, could these properties not be used to alleviate the housing famine? Your views, Gerry Loftus?
Well, as far as I be concerned, the whole lot of this too needs a major refurbishment and major start-up point of where we're at on all this, because there's so many people on, waiting lists and all of that type of stuff, and it's going to be a problem to fix it as far as I be concerned.
In terms of housing?
In terms of housing, yes. We're throwing out figures there of 14,000 people homeless, and inclusive, I think, of 4,000 children. But the reality is we have 500,000 people sleeping with fathers or mothers or granddads or grandmothers or uncles or aunts. Them are the real figures. 500,000 people that need a home today.
Where did you get those figures?
They are the statistics. They are the statistics of the people that are living with other people. That's a well-known fact in this country. There are 106,000 vacant properties in Ireland. There's 9,000 vacant properties in Mayo. Now, we have 14 years of Fine Gael in government, with the last two governments of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and this is where we're at. The other thing, if we were serious, if this government was serious about housing, virtually every town, as you drive through it, in Mayo and around the country, or most towns, or some towns, you would see development going on. You would see roads going in, sewers going in, electricity going in, and preparing to build houses. You don't see that anywhere. We just can't go out in the morning and start laying blocks like. We need to prepare for what we're doing.
Okay.
And the other thing about this, as well as all this carry on, we handed over 40 billion euros worth of assets to NAMA under Indi Kinney. 40 billion. Now these assets are in the control of vulture funds, landlords, land hoarding, all these type of things. So we were very well fit to put compulsory purchase on farmers for greenways. Why don't we go back now and compulsory purchase these people that are hoarding these entire estates, land, cocoa funds buying up half towns? This is what we are at, and the control of all this is driving rent up sky high, because the Irish government and the Irish people have no control of housing or rents in this country.
Okay, Keogh, why don't we see more action, as Gerry just said there, in terms of putting in the infrastructure for the housing that we know we need?
Well, let's be very clear. When Gerry says this government isn't serious about housing, we are very serious about housing. We have been canvassing for the past year. We're talking to the people. We're not blind. We know housing is the biggest issue, and we are going to solve the housing crisis.
I know, but people would say, why haven't you it solved?
Well, why haven't we it solved? We have to look at the crash that came in. Nobody wanted houses built in 2011 when we had ghost estates. We look at the fact that the construction industry stopped during COVID. We lost a lot of our construction workers to places like Australia, and we look at the population increases. They're the whys. Everybody knows them. But
how are you going to fix it?
We are going to fix it. We're making progress. Look, right now this year, we have 40,000 houses will be completed by the end of this year. We're going to get built in 60,000. We need a lot more affordable houses. I know that myself. I'm living in my granny's bedroom. I know this crisis all too well. The infrastructure is coming. We're building roads. We're getting the railways.
There's 5 affordable housing units in a new development in Westport, and that's the first for Mayo.
And there's 60 been approved in Castlebar. We are slowly making progress, but look at, if you try and get a plasterer or an engineer or electrician at the moment, is really, really difficult. We are trying to increase apprenticeships in college. You look, for a couple of years there, we got very snobby about, I need a degree, I need a master's, I need a PhD, and there wasn't people taking up apprenticeships. It's a multi-pronged approach, and we are very serious about this. Even things like looking at what Australia are doing. We've a lot of Irish out in Australia doing the FIFO programme, fly in, fly out. We are serious about this. We will solve it. We need to just get back into government. Okay,
Gerry Murray, you have Sinn Féin have a policy on how they will solve the housing issue.
We wrote the book, literally.
Okay, well, tell us how it'll happen here.
Basically, just to come back to Keira's point there, during the recession, the advice at that particular point in time was that the government should have embarked on major public works. First of all, to hold on to the construction workers, and number 2, during a recession, you get better value for money when you go to tender with major public works. That was the advice at the time. That advice wasn't taken. The construction workers left. That was one way of holding on to them.
How are you going to solve it now?
Well, what we're going to do, our plan basically is that the state has to take ownership of this crisis. And what we intend to do is a 2-pronged attack. We'll have a state bank to funnel the money into builders who are having huge difficulty in trying to extract finance from the banks. Number 2, The state, the local authorities will buy the land banks, we will develop them, we will bring in the services, water, sewerage, ESB, so that the builders just do the building and the local authority and the state do the actual site development. That's known as the Florida model. It has worked well in Europe. It works well in America. That's where it came from. We have discussed this in Mayo 3 years ago with the stakeholders. The Construction Federation of Ireland are acutely aware of it. It's a model that they support, but unfortunately there's a philosophy in Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael that the state shouldn't be in business. But when it comes to this housing crisis, the state has to be in business and the state must step up to the plate, and that's what Sinn Féin will do.
Gerry?
Yes, I'd agree with Gerry on that one. The state, exactly. The state and the cause this. Keira mentioned the crash. Let's talk about it for a minute. We had a perfectly good system of building houses in this country. We were building multitudes of council houses every year. And Fianna Fáil handed that over to developers and bankers and speculators, and they collapsed this economy all over all of that. Then we had Fine Gael in power in 2011. What did they do? They brought in vulture funds, they brought in cuckoo funds, and they turfed the men, women and children in this country out onto the street because they could not pay their mortgages. But today, they're still on the street and they can find accommodation, and I'm not racist. They can find accommodation for people from all over Africa and all over Asia and all over the place, but they cannot find accommodation for their own.
Well, surely there's a serious crisis in finding accommodation for asylum seekers, and that's part of what the government is working on. But Keira, there's a lot of accusations there that, Fine Gael just failed in this absolutely vital issue.
I just want to come back in to Gerry's point on social housing. We're now at record numbers of social housing since 1979. We have 8,000 social houses being built now annually, and we want to get that to 12,000. Also, we're going to keep the first-time buyers allowance, where there's 500 people accessing this weekly, where Sinn Féin are talking about taking that away.
Okay, anyone want to further than that?
No, we're talking about actually rolling out affordable houses. That's the plan and that's the strategy, and all of that has been costed, etc. And it's a model that has worked all over Europe. We're not coming up with the original idea. We're replicating what's working elsewhere in Europe and around the world.
Well,
and look at. The state has to step up to the plate. It cannot stand idly by and be a spectator.
I'm afraid we're just running out. We have a lot of questions on immigration, the number of guest houses and hotels in the county now providing asylum seeker and refugee accommodation means that there's no room at the inn for both national and international tourists, and that's directly impacting on our tourism in the county. Keira, what do you think of that? Westport, of course, where you're based, you must have seen the impact yourselves.
Teresa, I'm very well aware of this issue, given that my family run a tourism business and a hospitality business, the Hallam in Westport. Right now we have 1,500 beds, or let's say 3,000 people been taken. But let's make no mistake, this was a crisis situation. It was great to be able to help Ukrainians when they came into the country first, and people seeking international.
What are you going to do now?
I'm telling you now, we're moving away from hotels. We recognise that was an emergency situation. We're going to be doing more on state-owned land, and we know that this is having an impact on hairdressers and shops and local businesses, and we are moving away from the emergency situation into more sustainable measures.
And Gerry Murray, your view on that?
Well, basically, this government has mismanaged health, mismanaged justice. It's mismanaged housing.
We're talking about
to actually
tourism.
manage migration. But basically, our policy is that the state again has to step up to the plate. It has to provide the accommodation. There has to be. We will set up a migrant management agency.
Okay,
we will treble the resources. People will be processed speedily and fast, and those who have it, those who have an entitlement. But those who haven't a entitlement will be basically deported. That's the policy. Okay,
and Gerry?
Look, the horse has bolted on this as far as I'm concerned, because we cannot wave magic wands and solve problems like this, and we hear this auction politics every night on television and radio and so on.
But what would you do?
The reality is that in 2017 the government was made aware.
No, I don't have time for the history at the moment. What would you do to solve it?
Well, there's only one way to solve it, and that's build.
Oh, build. Okay, finally, last minute. What do you see as your greatest achievement to date for County Mayo as an elected representative or a community activist? Gerry, what would you say?
Putting the concept of critical infrastructure as being essential to the development of Mayo and the West. The Western Rail Corridor is firmly on the agenda as as a result of me being there for 20 years and campaigning on that issue. We're currently trying to put the N17 as a motorway on the agenda. Unfortunately, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael
Okay,
are not buying into
that's
it.
your greatest achievement. And then Keira.
Well, I could talk to you about debating awards or volunteerism or fundraising, but I'm going to talk about the work that I've done one-to-one with neurodiverse children and their families over the past 18 years, getting somebody to talk, use the bathroom, decrease self-injurious behaviour. And it's been very difficult to walk away from that career of 18 years, but I'm going to fight for them when I get to Dáil Éireann.
Okay, and Gerry Loftus.
Well, nationally, my greatest achievement would be the taking on of the planting of sickest spruce in the west of Ireland, to plant it out or to observe and store the emissions of the rest of the country. We've got that now, that soil, peat soil, any more than 1 foot cannot be planted. Of course, the Lahard and Doctor situation. And one other point I need to make, and
Very
I'm
quickly.
not here to talk on behalf of Sinn Féin.
No,
but I
no,
want
this
to
is
say this
no.
on the behalf
This
of
was
the
your
women.
greatest
I
achievement
want to say
today.
this.
That's what I know. I'm sorry, Gerry. The time is up. We thank the two Gerrys, Gerry Loftus and Gerry Murray, of course, and Keira Keogh. And a reminder that our final debate is on Friday lunchtime with Independent Ireland's Chris Maxwell, Green candidate Micheál Boxty O'Connell, and Independent candidates Patsy O'Brien and Sean Forkin. Thanks for your company.